You're listening to the Homeownership podcast by Momentum Realty, real estate talk for buying, selling, and owning property.
Hey guys, Sean Patrick Maloney here, broker owner of Momentum Realty, located in Hanover, Massachusetts. Welcome to episode 34. You just bought a home, what's next? I'm your host, Sean Patrick Maloney. Buying a home is a very exciting process. During that process, you're going to come into ownership of a home. This may be your first ever time owning a home, or maybe you've owned a home before. But there's a lot to know, and there's a lot to get done, and you want to make sure you take care of it in a timely fashion. So let's start off by talking about before you buy the home. During the process of buying the home, what are some of the things that you're going to need to have transferred to your own name? What are some of the things that you're going to actually want to think about getting done while you still have contact with the existing homeowner? Because once the home's sold to you, it's your home, and a lot of times homeowners will tell you, hey, I'll give you my phone number and I'll get you information, but once they've got their money and they're on their way, it's often hard to get certain information, and once they do their junk out, they may end up getting rid of some things that you will want in the future. So make sure you check in with them ahead of time through your agent. Obviously, always go through your agent. Don't go reaching out to them. I know sometimes people exchange phone numbers. It's kind of a bad idea because you don't want to say something that can compromise the deal, and you also don't want to get involved in hearing things that you shouldn't hear during the deal. So one of the things we want to think about at the beginning is all the things we want to transfer. So some of the things you may want to transfer, or you decide to get your own, but if you decide to transfer them, the security system. Security systems are pretty easy to have a transfer. You just call over and they usually send over a contract confirmation, have that transferred over. Otherwise, you could have it also that you wanted the security system to be changed over. Maybe you want to tell your agent during the offer process, hey, I would like them to remove the security system. This is something you want to tell them at the very beginning when you make the offer. You're not going to be able to get them to remove the system after you've made the offer because it doesn't say it, and it could be costly, especially if there's places where they need to do some patching and plastering. Next down would be gas. The gas, if there's gas or oil, you're going to want to transfer it. With gas, it's pretty easy. You call the gas company, you tell them the closing date, they immediately transfer it based on the meter. With oil, you need to decide, do you want to use the existing oil provider or do you want to use a different oil provider? Some oil providers allow you to do monthly budgets, some allow you to buy in bulk ahead of time, but the existing oil that's actually physically in the tank, during the day of the closing, what they call the final reading, you'll be buying the oil that's in the tank off of the existing owner so that it's now your oil. But if you want to take on that oil company as a future contract and have them automatically fill it, this may be something you want to do ahead of time. If you don't do it ahead of time after you buy the house, you want to make sure that you get the oil person set up so that you get yourself on an auto delivery schedule. Don't be the person that waits till the end to order it, because always when it's super cold out, you call in to order it. If you run it all the way down, you run out, they're not going to have any sympathy for you. If you're not in contract with them, they're going to treat you a lot better if you're in a contract for delivery. The electric is something else that we need to have transferred over. The electric's really easy. That one there, you tell them the closing date and they just switch it over the day of the closing. It's a really simple one. If there is a solar system on the roof, if it's a leased solar system, you're going to have the transfer documents put together on that. That's something you're going to have to take care of earlier in the deal because you actually have to sign on the lease. If they own the panels, you just want to make sure they own them free and clear and that there's no problems with them, and as well as that there was permits pulled on them. But with electric, it's a fairly easy transition. Cable is another one that's easy, but remember the cable companies are terrible nowadays. They basically are a giant conglomerate that take over the world and they can do whatever they want. Now, when you call them for cable, it can take as many as 3 to 5 days to get it. So if you don't want to be in the dark for 3 to 5 days on internet and cable, you may want to call ahead of time and schedule your cable install or cable changeover or your high-speed internet Fios changeover, whatever you're going to go with depending on the area you're in. But you want to call that in early and ahead of time. I know a lot of people are devastated when they hear that it's going to be 3 to 5 days before they get internet, especially if they have students in school or they have needs. Maybe they work from home or things, to find out that it takes that long. Back when I was a child, not too long back, you could call a cable company and they were so excited to have a client, they'd run right out and they'd install it. But nowadays they don't. The other thing is when you do a cable install, you may want to reach out to an electrician as well. The cable guys nowadays, they don't actually know what they're doing, and they pretty much just drill through any wall, anywhere, run cables exposed out. So now if you really want to fish cable correctly and you want to put a TV on the wall and things, usually you have to actually have an electrician come run those lines ahead of time. So it's something you want to be aware of when you're doing your walkthrough and things. Where do you want to put stuff? Do we need to have the guy come? A lot of things are wireless now. A lot of the TVs and stuff you can wirelessly hook to cable boxes. So it's not as pressing, but if you're going to want to run Ethernet cables and different things like that, you may have to hook up with an electrician as well for that. Then some of the things you want to ask the owner about would be if they have any manuals or remotes. If they have skylights, is there a pull to opening them? If they have skylight shades, is there a pull to closing and opening those? Do they have remotes to different fans? Do they have remotes to air conditioning units like wall mounts? Or do they have them for the alarm system and all these different things? You want to ask that ahead of time, ahead of them moving out, as well as the manuals, because when they're packing, a lot of these things, whether accidental or not caringly, they may throw them away or they may put them away and not have them. So you want to make sure you reach out to them ahead on that. And then also make sure your agent or yourself asks about warranties. Quite a bit of equipment that we have in the modern day home come with warranties. Everything from heating systems to ovens to lots of the different things. They come with extended warranties, but in order to have that warranty be valid, you have to have a proof of purchase or you have to have an original filled out warranty be transferred. So just make sure you are buying this home for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and a lot of this equipment is expensive, that any warranties that can be transferred are transferred. And then sometimes people have drawings of maybe where the irrigation heads are or where the septic system is. The septic system one's not as important to get from them because you can get it from town hall, but if maybe there's underground piping that they put in on their own and they drew a drawing of it, or if there's an underground dog fence and they have a drawing of it, ask for those just because it can be very helpful versus just trying to figure it out when you get it. The irrigation system one is a really helpful one because a lot of people don't know where the irrigation heads are, and then they go to do some sort of install, whether it be a patio or they go to put up a fence, and then the next thing you know, they're drilling a bunch of holes in their existing system because they didn't know where it runs underground. And then help locating items. So that's another thing the old owner is good for. Locating items throughout the house. They can tell you where certain switches are. They can tell you what everything does. They can tell you the little nuances, because we all have houses that, you just twist it this way or you just move it that way, or, behind the tree over there is where the wellhead is. Just make sure that you get those pieces of information, because it's important when you actually have an issue to know where these are. During the home inspection, the home inspector should have showed you where the water main shutoff is as well as the electrical main shutoff is. But if they didn't, also reach out to them for that. They typically will know and be able to help out. Another thing you can ask them about is past contractors. Past contractors that worked on the house are usually the best people to have working on the house because they know where everything is. They know how things have been done. You may have your own contractors, but even if you just get the past contractor info, if your contractors run into issue, it can help when they reach out to them. Another thing they might know is the information for the neighbors. This is sometimes helpful if there's a local community where you have cookouts and different things like that. It might be nice to know the phone numbers for people, and especially if you're in a homeowners association and if there's any homeowner association documents. One other thing you want to think about before is the transfer of insurance. This one here, kind of redundant because I'm sure the mortgage person is going to tell you that you have to have an insurance plan, but do think about it ahead of time, and then any other insurances such as your car insurances and things like that the mortgage broker is not going to be working on. You want to make sure they're transferred correctly so that way the cars are registered properly and everything like that. After you get the home, you can change over your car registration and things once you actually have the property secured, so that way the mail can go to you. But the insurances and things is something you want to bring up to your agent ahead of time. After you take the property into your possession, you want to make sure if they haven't already, you transfer those warranties. You're going to go down to the post office or go online and do a transfer of your mail. If you go to the post office, they typically give you some coupons in there, a lot of good ones, typically a 10% off the local hardware shop and things like that. It may be helpful, so going down in person isn't that bad. Just make sure you realize that you want to do a transfer for each and every person in the household that is getting mail. It's not just for one, it's for each and every. So you can go online, it's fairly easy, like I said, or you can go down to the mail and actually have it done. A lot of times people are shocked when they find out some mail will already be going to the new house. And then you want to make sure you reach out to the people who take over your house and the people who you are buying the house from, both whether you had a house in the past or not, but you want to make sure both have your contact info, so if you get each other's mail, it's easy to transfer and move it over. And make sure you do that for the other person as well. If you get mail, don't think, I'll send it to them once a month or once a week or things like that. Forward it out right away. Get it over to them. Let them know that you have it. It's common to get packages from Amazon and things like that. And again, make sure you go into your Amazon account and other accounts like that are mailing you things. Maybe you get meals in the mail and you actually do the cooking and things like that, or you get a bunch of different things through these mail order or web order type items. Make sure those are transferred over. Another item that you want to think about is the door locks. A lot of people go and they take all the door locks and they take the actual handles off and they buy all new handles. One thing that can be really helpful is a locksmith. A locksmith can be helpful because they actually can keep all the doors the same. Whereas a lot of times people buy different handles and they have all sorts of different handles around and they don't realize that the piece in the middle where the key actually goes in, that can be changed out. And it's really nice when you have it done by a locksmith because, like I said, they can make your slider, your front door, your shed, everything all open with the one key. Or maybe you want separate keys for the things. But it's also a lot of times often less expensive because you don't have to buy all the equipment. They actually just take the guts out of the middle and put that in. And it keeps the house looking the same, especially if you have like a really nice door and you don't want to take off those handles because they match and they're really expensive. It can be really nice to have the locksmith come out. Also, while you're doing that, think about if there's a garage door opener that has a code or anything else that has codes. If they have a keypad door, you want to change the passwords to something that you're familiar with and that's not going to be something where the old owner can get in. Most likely the old owner isn't going to come back, but they also have friends, family, contractors, all these other things that have been to the house that may know the code and they may have shared it in other places. So just make sure you're safe by changing those out right away. A lot of people in the modern day have cameras on their homes, whether they be Ring cameras for the doorbell or they just have regular camera system. One thing you want to make sure is that you lock the old user out. You want to make sure that they're transferred over to your name, or if you're not using them at all, you want to make sure that the other person's at least canceled out. And my suggestion is if you're not using them at all, take them down, or at least disable them to a point where they can't work. Take the power away from them, remove the cables from them, things like that. If you want to leave them up, pretend, don't leave them wired, because in a day of modern age where the internet's there and people can get into things, if you leave your cameras up and you leave power to them, someone potentially could get into them and they could end up watching over. I actually have a friend recently that was telling me that they canceled their Ring subscription. They got an alert one day and they realized they're still connected to the home that they no longer own, even though they actually had Ring shut them off. They're not paying the bill anymore, but Ring hasn't done their job in locking the old account out. These things happen in big businesses, so don't be surprised by this. Just protect yourself. Some of the other things you want to think about after is, this is more of like a what to do at this point, is with the lawn care, you want to make sure you always have the irrigation shut down for the winter and open up in the summer. I suggest having an irrigation company. That way there, when you have broken heads and things, you have somebody to fix it. The shrubs will need to have pruning, typically twice a year, spring and fall. You want to make sure you weed the beds on the regular. If you leave the beds to get really weedy, it can kill out your shrubs, and also it can create a lot of work. And once they go to seed, it creates more and more work. You always want to pull the weeds before they go to seed so that you have less weeds in the future. And then you want to think, am I going to have a lawn mowing company or am I going to mow it myself? And last but not least, are you going to have a fertilization done? A lot of people who have never had a yard don't realize that you need to have it fertilized and treated for weeds and bugs and everything like that. You can take over a house that has a beautiful lawn, forget to turn on the irrigation system, not mow it as often, not pay for a company to come and fertilize or do it yourself, and within months you've killed a great lawn. So you want to make sure you learn how to take care of it. And that's why it's really important, if you don't know what you're doing, to reach out to a landscaper at minimum for a consultation of what to do. And also maybe the last homeowner will give you a little advice on the contractors that they were using and what they were doing to keep it so nice. If you're going to be heating your house with firewood, you want to order that early. You don't call in firewood the day you want it, because a lot of the companies that sell firewood will tell you it's seasoned, and it's not. The best way to season firewood and know it's seasoned is to get it early, stack it, cover it, and let it dry. When you have dry firewood, it burns much better, burns warmer, burns longer, and is also safer for your fireplace. The gutters are something you want to make sure you clean on the regular. Gutter cleaning typically happens between 1 and 2 times a year, depending on the house and how many trees you have overhead, but at minimum you want to do it once before the winter time. Once the fall leaves fall, not all the way, but most of the way, right before the freezes, you want to get up there and clean those gutters, or you want to hire someone to. Not cleaning your gutters can lead to a lot of things. One of the big ones is ice dams and having the water back up into the roof. The other one is having full gutters with moisture in them because of something called a soffit vent and a ridge vent that lets the house breathe. The moisture will float up from the gutters and condensate inside the roof, causing mold issues. So make sure to clean the gutters. It's a very cheap, very easy thing to take care of that can lead to a very costly repair if you don't. If you own a driveway and it's paved, you want to think about seal coating. Seal coating, depending on what you're doing, anywhere between every 5 to every 20 years. But I would say don't do the 20-year process. I would do every 5 or 10. That way there you're keeping up with it on the regular. I really don't believe in any of the ones that say they're 20-year products because the test of time always shows that they don't end up holding up and you just end up spending a lot more money on a 20-year process that doesn't tend to last. Pressure washing and chemical washing can be a great way to avoid expensive paint jobs and wash jobs in the future. Pressure wash the pool deck, pressure washing the walkways and things like that can remove lichen and moss and mold and all those builds up. And it also can prevent concrete from cracking in the future. Keeping it clean, keeping it all cleaned off and not letting water build up and create moss and mold can save it from cracking in the future. When you leave moss and other debris on a patio deck that's made of concrete over the winter, it gets water in it, freezes up, and ends up cracking it. Then painting. Painting is a big one. I can't give you a timeline on painting, but when something needs paint, it's easiest to do it when it's just starting to peel and crack than in the future. When you let it go all the way, it ends up getting at the wood underneath and it causes rot and other problems. Paint is a very cheap way to protect wood and a very good way to keep the home looking neat and clean and protected for years to come. That way there in the future, you're not going to have a big problem. If you have any equipment like lawnmowers, snowblowers, other things like that, you want to think about winterizing them and summerizing them. This is something you want to do all the time. People often want to avoid these little maintenance costs. They don't want to pay to have someone winterize or summarize the different equipment depending on what season you use it. Gasoline nowadays comes with different chemicals in it, ethanol and other things like that break down faster than ever. Putting away a lawnmower and trying to use it 7 months later, you might find it doesn't start. You can go to the hardware store and pick up different things that may end up holding the fuel over for the time, but most often you're best to just either empty the fuel out or have a company set it up for the winter and then have it open up in the summer. Depending on your abilities and skills, you can choose that. But again, same thing with the snowblower and other power equipment. Just putting them in the shed till next time you use them can lead to issues. Usually if you have them done in the winter or you have them done in the summer, you can have the tune-up done at the same time. You can have the blade sharpened on the lawnmower. You can have all the service items done. That way there your equipment runs for years to come. Equipment can be very expensive, so to not maintain it can be a costly mistake. I hope all this stuff helps you in your future home ownership. There's a lot to home ownership. I could go on for hours here on different things that you can do, but these are some of the most pressing and important things. One of the things I want you to notice about today's podcast is maintenance is everything. Maintenance is everything for multiple reasons. One, because everything in the world is very expensive nowadays, so not having to rebuy it can save you a lot of money and you can spend way less on maintenance. But the other one is, the reality is you're probably not going to live in this home forever. And when you go to resell this home and you go to get to the point where you're trying to figure out the valuation, people who spend money on maintenance tend to be the same people who build up a lot of equity and have a great home. The people who don't spend a lot of maintenance, they tend to be the ones who, when they meet with us, they argue with us to tell us as an agent, my house is worth much more money, but they forget over the years they haven't maintained anything, and instead of needing a little bit of paint, they need new boards and wood because the wood's rotten. Or instead of needing a new driveway, they could just need another coat of seal coat because they've actually been taking care of it. So the people who take care of it, they tend to be the ones who don't need to buy new landscapes to transfer. They don't need to have mold taken care of in the attic. They don't have to buy a new driveway for the next owner. They have the stuff that they bought because they've preserved it. So preserving your stuff can preserve your wealth and it can grow your wealth. Make sure you remember, everything in life that comes easy tends to be the stuff that doesn't treat you well. It takes a little bit of effort to live well, but I guarantee it'll be worth it. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to reach out to me. You can PM me, DM me, call me, whatever works best. Make sure to follow the podcast. I really appreciate you listening this week, and I look forward to talking to you next week. Have a great week.